This is a movement made by sessions. They're kind of common. You see them every once in a while. We've had about 3 in the shop in the last year. It's not real common, but you do see them. And so I'm actually going to do kind of a bit of a different video. I'm documenting some repairs for our technicians of kind of common things to look for and to adjust to make sure that this runs correctly. See, these can be a little bit tricky because there are a bunch of things that can go wrong if you don't know how to adjust it right. So we're going to go through all those different things so that if you're having trouble with one, then you can know right where to look and to solve the problem quickly and efficiently. Now, I like this movement a lot. I think it's really interesting. It's very unique. One of the things I like about it is that it's only got 2 winding arbors, and yet it has the Westminster melody. It's got 5 hammers in order to do the Westminster on the strike. And that's really uncommon for a couple of reasons. One, because there aren't many American-made clocks that do a melody, a strike, a chime, I should say. There just really aren't many different styles of American clocks that'll do that, especially in the same movement. A lot of times they'll have a separate movement to do the melody. The other thing that's interesting is that you only wind 2 arbors. Normally, if you have a chime, time, and strike, in other words, the music, the gong, and the time, you have a separate arbor for each one of those, so you have to wind all 3 arbors. In this case, you only have to wind 2 arbors, which maybe I'm lazy, but I think it's just more efficient, and it's less to wind every week. And since I spend a lot of my life winding clocks, the less arbors I have to wind, the easier it is. So I think it's just really neat, just from an efficiency perspective, from a historical perspective. But some people don't think it's so neat because they can be kind of a pain. And some people won't work on them because they can be so tricky. And so my backstory here is that I've got a clock that we've been working on for about a year, which is way longer than we ever want to work on a clock. But we've been through a lot, and we found every possible way that one of these can get stuck. So now you get to benefit from all that learning and efficiently be able to solve the problems that I've spent a long time having to beat my head against a wall in order to solve. So let's get into that. What makes them tricky is that there are lots of things that can get bound. So there's stuff on the front, stuff on the back. And so let's just kind of walk through those in a minute. But first, you need to understand how it's supposed to operate so that you know what it's supposed to do, so that if it's not doing that, you know where to look. So a lot of this is going to look familiar if you know anything about a rack and snail movement. So this rack right here and this snail look just like any other rack and snail. So the snail is what determines how many times it strikes on the hour. So you know, strike is like the gong, where it's like dun, dun, dun for 3 o'clock. And then chime is the melody or the song, the Westminster. Da, 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 da. And so we have this rack here, which controls how many times it strikes. And so you have the landings for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way around to 12. And then behind that, you have an additional rack hiding back here and an additional snail hiding back here. So this is the quarter-hour snail. This is going to determine how long it does the melody for. Now, on a Hermle movement or some modern chiming movement, that second cam would be over here somewhere, and it would be on a separate gear train. But in this case, they're all on the same gear train. Now, it is interesting that they use a rack to determine how long to run the melody for, but that's actually just like a Hershey. If you've ever worked on a Hershey tube clock, they have that. They have a separate rack, and that rack is what determines how long it does the chimes for. The difference here, though, is that it is all on the same gear train. So what happens as you're going around, we're going to come to the quarter hour here, and that rack in the back fell 1 tooth, which is dictated by this right here. So I'm going to actually back up again so you can see it. So it's going into warning, and now this just fell on that snail back here on the tallest position, which allowed this to drop by 1 tooth right there. Now, this front rack we're totally ignoring. It doesn't do anything right now. And so there, it ratcheted up the back rack. Now, the front rack also came up, but it didn't actually index at all. It just moved and then went back to where it was. Now, we're going to come around to the half hour. And we've dropped to the second position here, the half-hour position. This has dropped 2 notches, which is hard to see hidden back there, but we're 2 notches down, and now it's going to go up 1 notch and second notch, and then it stops. So that's for the half hour. Similarly, for the 45-minute quarter till, it's going to do 3 notches, 1, 2, 3. And then the fun part, we come around to the hour, and now there our quarter hour rack has fallen, and it's fallen on the lowest position. So it's come down 4 notches, which is hard to see because it's hidden back there, but it's come down 4 notches. But now the other cool part, this hour rack has fallen, and now this hour rack is going to work just like any other rack and snail. So in this case, it's fallen to the 10 o'clock position. 10 o'clock. And so now the interesting part is it's going to add together the 10 plus the 4. So it's going to do 14 revolutions. 1, 2, and you notice this back rack keeps falling. 3, and it's going to keep falling until the front rack goes all the way up. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now at this point, it's able to start bringing up the back rack as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it stops. So it's kind of a mechanical calculator, which I think is really neat. And so it adds those together, and that determines how long it runs for. And so on the back side, you've got this drum here, and this, just like any Westminster drum, it's got pins to pull the hammers back. It operates pretty normally. But there's a unique feature in here where as we come around to the quarter hour, this drum will slide, and it will slide onto this pin right here. So I'm bringing the hand around to the quarter hour right now. That pin is catching the drum. Now the entire drum is going to go. See, this right here is what actually drives everything. These others just float. They free float. So then, as we keep coming around, that's going to drive everything. There's the half hour. Here's the 45-minute. Now here we come around to the hour, and it's going to play the melody, and it's going to keep playing until it gets to the end of the hour melody. And when it does, it's going to slide. And so what happened is this pin was able to drop into a hole, and this whole assembly was able to slide toward the movement and get stuck right there on that pin, and this part keeps going. And so it did as much as it needed to do of the melody, and then it did as much as it needed to do of the strike. And so that, in this case, it'd be 15 counts. It did 14 last time, so it's 15. So we had 4 counts for the drum, and then 11 counts for the strike. So that is, in a nutshell, how it works. Another important part of that, what made that drum come back out, is when you go to the 15-minute mark, quarter after, there's this little cam right here, and it's going to push that little lever. It's going to shove that drum out onto the pin. So now, let's talk through all the failure points that are common on these. So let's start on the front. What can happen is this pin right here, there's 2 pins on this wheel, either one of these can get caught on either of the rack teeth. So let me show you what it's doing here. So right there, as it goes to grab the tooth, if it hits the top of the tooth, it'll get stuck. When it gets stuck, then the chimes are going to be frozen in place, and whenever the time comes back around, it's going to seize up, usually because of the 15-minute cam in the back. So watch for those pins. Make sure that as it's turning, that it's able to comfortably catch those teeth without risking hitting the top of the teeth at any point. Now, if it doesn't, there's 2 adjustments. One is these pins. You might need to straighten them out if they've been bent in the past. Generally, you don't want to bend these pins first if you don't have to, but if they look like they've been damaged or messed up or one's dramatically different from the other, it might be good to start straightening that first. But your primary adjustment is actually right here. So there is a friction clutch in there between this black part and the silver part for both of these racks. And so if the rack's falling too far or not falling far enough, you can change where that point is based on where it falls on the rack and make sure that the teeth of the rack are falling in line with these pins. So once you've checked that to make sure these are both falling the correct amount, then make sure these pins are straightened up and they line up with everything correctly. Now if on the hour, when both racks fall, these should both line up with each other, and so these teeth right here, those teeth should line up perfectly. You see that? We can look straight through that saw blade through both sets of teeth, and they're lined up perfectly. That's what you want. If one of them is not lined up with the other one, well, you're pretty likely to hit a tooth or do something weird, so you need to adjust these clutches down here to make sure they line up correctly. So those are some of the common issues on the front side. Let's move around to the back. Failure points here. When you come around to the quarter hour, a lot of times this is the most common place for it to stop, because this is when it's trying to shove the drum out and it's trying to use this cam to do that. And so if your clock is always stopping at 10 after or something like that, 5 after, 12 after, then take a look at this cam, and this cam probably isn't the issue. It's probably just the one caught with the handbag. So it's going to be shoving this out, but if this drum can't come out, then everything has to get frozen. And so what can cause that is this pin right here. If it's not lined up with one of the holes, see the hole right there? It's got to line up with one of these holes, and if it doesn't line up with that, it'll get stuck. Now, some of these have this little safety device here that will allow that pin to kind of move and not get bound up. Some of them don't have that. So it needs to line up perfectly with that. So if that's not lining up, there's two adjustments. One, you can adjust it here to move where this pin goes. But the other adjustment is this pin we were talking about earlier over here. Right, where am I? There you are. That pin right there is on an adjustment cock. So you can see this right here. You can twist that one way or the other to make sure that it lines up correctly. Now, you'll need to make sure that you're adjusting the correct one. And so, both of these can affect the same thing. So just think through it very carefully and closely and make sure that you're adjusting the correct one. But both of those are important. So let's just watch this one more time. This drum is going to go around until that pin catches in the hole. There we go, it dropped. And now this one keeps going, and let's watch where it stops. There, and it stopped, so it's lined up with that hole. So then we just want to make sure that when we come around to the 15-minute mark, that hole goes right onto the pin, just like that. Perfect. It keeps going. Then the last thing to watch for is just make sure that this cam is adjusted right. So this cam should be lined up so that when we're at the 15-minute mark, quarter after, that this cam is lifting this guy sufficiently far. Now, if it doesn't, this cam can actually twist on this shaft, so you might need to twist that around if it's not pointing to the right position. Last thing, and this can be kind of tricky. If all of those things are right and it just won't run the chimes, it just doesn't seem strong enough, of course, check your normal things like bent pivots, oil, debris, stuff like that. If all those other things are out of the way, then that leaves you with mainsprings. And so this is one of the things we had to deal with lately, is replacing mainsprings. Because there were some old mainsprings in it that were set, and it was not a very apparent issue. So the mainsprings we used recently, I'm going to give you the details on that. So if you need that, you've got it. They were 3/4 inch wide, this direction, by 16.5, so 16.5 thousandths thick, and 96 inches long. And on Timesaver's website, if you're going to buy it there, it would be part number 18790. And those did fantastic, and they fixed the clock. I don't know if that would be the original factory spring, but it matched the same dimensions of the springs that were in there. And so hope that's helpful in case you run into that too. Those are the springs we used, and they're working great so far. So if anybody knows of what the actual manufacturer's dimensions or whatnot would be, then please comment below. We'd love to see that. But those mainsprings can be really important if you're having weird issues with the chimes stopping, and eventually the time's going to stop as a result. If you checked all these other things we talked through, look at the mainsprings. And the nice thing is these mainsprings are pretty easy to swap. You let them down into a clamp, you can just take these brackets off. Take this bracket off, watch out for these springs here, take those off first so they don't get all stretched out. Take off that bracket, mainspring comes out, you got to take these screws out too, one on each side to take that post out. And they were very smart, good engineers here. Put a hole, access hole through here so you can get to that screw, take that post completely out, spring comes out, swap it out, and you're good to go. So anyway, there's the sessions, Two-Arbor chiming Westminster movement. And now you know all the common issues that are unique to this clock. So I hope that helps you with any troubleshooting that you have to do.